What's up, everybody? Today's another episode of Vocation Venture, and it will be another edition of Amazement because I have in the audience waiting. I'm gonna bring her on almost instantaneously. Is Teegan Bartos. She is an amazing career coach. I think she's an amazing LinkedIn influencer. Well, maybe we'll talk about that. And she helps you get placed in your job. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of uncertainty right now in the world. So I'm like, perfect timing, perfect time. So let's bring her on. If I missed who she is, she can fill us in. How's
Hey,
that for an
Randy,
intro?
thanks for having me here today.
What's up, Teegan? So Teegan, how else could we ask? I gave you the shortest little intro, but if you were to tell people, hey, I'm Teegan, this is who I am, what would you say?
Well, you know how the job search sucks? That's where I come in. I am Teegan Bartos, founder of Jolt Your Career. And under my firm, I've got a couple of different verticals. One, we help job seekers with resume writing, LinkedIn optimization, job search strategy coaching. And on the other hand, I partner with corporate organizations from talent acquisition trainings, technology integrations, just overall consulting, in addition to building out robust career curriculum departments. And so I've got my hands in a couple of pots, and I know you were wanting to kind of explore how I diversified my revenue streams. Well, we'll see if we get into that.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. I want to get to that for sure at some point, but it's just because of what's going on in the news, the job market, all the crazy things that I'm like, I have the expert here that can help people. And I specifically have about 2 or 3 people that are really affected by what's going on right now. So I'm like, hey, you should tune in. You got to check out Teegan. She's a rock star. I love even that. You could talk about your content too if you wanted to start with, because you're another person that I think has excellent LinkedIn branding and content. And I think it shows. You have tons of people that are starting to follow you because you put it in a way it's so professional, it looks so good. And they're like, how can I align myself with that kind of thing? My brand, how can I make my brand better? So yeah, we got to talk about what's going on in the world. We got to talk about helping people that are in a tough situation that might be looking for a job. And then I want to hear about your pivot, because when you told me about that, I was like, that's awesome. So yeah, just as a place to start, tell me a little, like, how did you start getting so good with your LinkedIn content? Because you're branding yourself, you're advertising. LinkedIn is your resume to the world, and it looks great. Your content looks great. Just tell us a little, like, how did that even start? How did you start getting such good content, and what's your strategy?
So when I first joined LinkedIn, it was just a virtual resume. There wasn't any branding about it. You just kind of looked for, it was a job board and nothing more. Like there wasn't really a social aspect to it as much. But then when Microsoft bought out LinkedIn, the things started to change. And then especially when COVID hit and everybody swarmed to LinkedIn. I mean, they got millions of new members. People began using it as more of a social platform, more as a networking platform. The platform became less guarded versus like, oh, I'm an executive, I'm a gatekeeper of information, and more, hey, how can I help? Let me show you a little bit about who I am and how I can help. So I used to just focus on my clients' brands, right? And then I finally decided, well, no, I need to focus on mine too. And that's when I started creating more and more content for myself and finding my voice, which that is not easy. It takes time, and you iterate and you evolve as you go along in your journey. But basically, I just talk about what people want to know. Every single conversation I have could potentially be a piece of content. I recently just ran a poll about what kind of shoes do you wear to work, because a client of mine, she didn't even get an opportunity to apply for a role because they said she lacked executive presence because of the kind of clothes she wears. She has like plantar fasciitis, so she has to wear more supportive shoes instead of high heels. And they essentially said, hey, because you don't wear heels, you're not going to be considered for the partner track, which is crap. So I made a post about it, and people just enjoy it. They resonate with it. It's like, yeah, I've been there too, or that tip is helpful, or I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Let me just look through everything you've ever posted. I've got people who will go back years through my content and like leave a comment saying, this is so helpful. And it's like, I wrote that 3 years ago, but people just dig and dig and dig to get the information that they want. And it's free. And so you can kind of go through and learn so much as a consumer just on the content somebody puts forward. So my goal is always to be educational, to be helpful, and sometimes a little sarcastic, because that's just my natural tendency.
That's who you are. No, that's I've noticed, and when I tell people, like, you're a very straight shooter. You tell people exactly how it is. You don't pull any punches, and people respect and appreciate that. I think it comes through in your content. You give away a lot of great content. So I don't think I ever told you this. I don't know why I didn't mention it last time we talked, but I use your free, I think it's your blue resume type that you created. So I was like, who do I know who's awesome at this? Okay, let me look at Teegan. Okay, what she did? Oh, she's promoting that she gives away these free cool things. Let me go check them out. I went and got them. I still used it to this day. That's how, when I found my last job, I had that resume. That's what was going out to people.
I'm glad it was helpful. You know what? The thing is, I would rather not work with someone. I would rather someone not need to work with me or be in a position to work with me. I work with primary, like, 2 people. One, somebody who's too busy to do it themselves and just wants to outsource it, right? So, like, an executive doesn't write their own speeches. They have a speech writer, or I should say a politician. And it's the same thing. You can just outsource it to somebody that you trust, who's going to write in your voice and get the message that you would like to articulate across. Or someone who's just like, I don't even know where to start. But for the people who fall in the middle of, like, I can do this myself, I would just like to have a cheat sheet on how to do it quicker. I love giving away stuff like that, because when good people have good jobs, the world is a better place. And I know that's so cliche or like pageantry, but it's true.
It worked on me. It worked. You got me. You got me. I think I was talking with my guest last week with Amina. Your why is so important. And when you're doing something, you could just be, I just help people get jobs, just good at writing stuff, good at highlighting their good points. Or I believe that placing this person is making the world a better place, because it ripples out to them. It ripples out to the world. It affects their immediate family. It affects the next level. It just keeps going. It affects that company. So it can be seemingly simple, or like you said, hey, maybe it's cliche. I think it's powerful. I think it's powerful if you're changing somebody's life on that level. Because if you think about it, what do you spend most of your life doing? Sleeping, working, and I guess free time. But like a third of your life is work. So you better be in a place. And that's something you've talked a lot about before. And I don't know what, again, your thoughts you would give people, but not just getting a job, but getting like a job that upscales your life, a job that's your dream job, a job where your skills are being appreciated and you're getting the most pay for it. You've talked a lot about, I think that's also another niche you have, is taking somebody and upgrading their whole life by giving them a new job opportunity.
Yeah, I'm really selective at this point with the type of client that I work with. I only want to work with people who are very specific in what their goals are, who genuinely want to have a career that brings them a greater sense of fulfillment. I do not judge anyone who goes to work to get a paycheck. There's no judgment here. But for somebody that I'm going to take hours to work, I mean, to write a resume, it can take 20 hours. And I'm on multiple calls, and I follow my clients through their entire job search process. And years later, they reach back out to talk about what they want to do next. And they end up referring their children to work with me when they graduate college, and friends and family. And so when I work with someone, I know it's not a transaction. I know it's the beginning of a relationship. And so I'm very specific in that I want to work with people who want to align their internal and external motivators with the type of employment that they're wanting to go to next. And I get when like somebody's laid off and they just need a paycheck. Great. Get the job so you can have a paycheck, have some benefits, but then keep looking for what it is you truly want. So all of those pieces come together. I call it the perfect fit. You know, the factors that influence all of the things that make us feel like we have a purpose in life, and all of the other things that matter too, like I only want to work remote, or I need a certain salary and things like that.
I love that. And what's funny is I'm sure that for some people that might be taboo, like to find a job with the idea of looking for another one. It is just the harsh reality. And the other part that's real about it is, do you really want somebody working for you that doesn't absolutely love the job?
Well,
Where
it's really hard to get hired when you're just taking a job to have a paycheck. Like companies want to hire people that have a vested interest in the company's success. That just
Mm,
is hiring 101. But
mhm.
times are rough. And so if you've got to take a filler job while it takes longer for an opportunity that you really, really want to come along, you won't necessarily do a bad job. You're still going to do a great job in that filler job, but you're going to still keep looking. And you should anyways. If the past couple of years have taught us anything, nobody's job is secure. Top, top hypo, like classified hypos. Somebody who's in the top, 10% of an organization, they're being let go. No one is safe. And so it kind of always have the mentality of always be looking. You can take a call with a recruiter just so they can get to know you, but you can say, hey, I'm comfortable with where I'm at, but let's stay in touch. Just because you're always looking doesn't mean you're always job hopping, but it means you're being proactive so that should something happen or should your goals change, you're already ahead of the game, because the average job search takes 6 months. That's why unemployment is 6 months long. But for once you get higher levels, like an executive search, it takes closer to a year. That's a long time.
I mean, that was my experience as well, and we'll have to talk about this more later, like how tough it can be to even just find a job, to even get noticed when there's 2,000 applicants that have applied. It's like, oh God, how am I going to stand out? I need to know somebody. But maybe
Yeah.
that's a conversation for another day. You hit on something important there, that you're keeping your options open. You're being open, but you're not looking all the time. I saw somebody who's probably a LinkedIn influencer posting about how it's slightly more nuanced than this, but how job hopping is the best strategy to increase your pay. It's like, it's true, but it shouldn't be. Like, and then at the end of the day, are you really like, it's stressful to change jobs. It's stressful
Yeah.
to learn something new. How are you dominoing your skills? How are you growing and learning in an area? Like, yes, there are places that they suck at giving people raises and they don't recognize their people. They'll pay somebody from the outside to come into a role more than what they'll up somebody who's there to keep them. I get it. I get that there's this thing, but you really should try to find a place that you love what they do. They pay you fairly, they respect you and appreciate you, and then you just continue to grow. If you're in a like a pot, if you're a plant in a pot and you can't grow anymore and you're root bound in that role, okay, it's probably time to move on. But not just like a mercenary, like, hey, I can make an extra buck here, I can make an extra couple thousand here. It seems like a long-term bad strategy.
Well, there's the loyalty tax. And then the loyalty tax is a legit thing. The longer you stay with a company, the less you are going to get paid compared to market value. And that's across even, the top companies to work for. It just happens. And so you definitely want to keep an eye on your market value, and you want to proactively have conversations with your leadership team to make sure your compensation stays on target for what the industry bears. When we're doing annual performance reviews. There's like a bell curve. Like 10% of the people are going to be listed as hypos. Those are going to be the people who are going to get like the 8% raises. The rest of the bell curve is going to be getting the 3% raises, and the other end's going to be put on pips. And that is historically how it's gone, but that doesn't always keep up with inflation. Those percentages don't always keep up with market value. And so it's important to not just wait until your annual performance review to have those conversations. So like mid-year and things of that nature, when you take on additional projects or whatever it may be, that you can get promoted in both title and in compensation, or if it's not in title, definitely in compensation, to not have that loyalty tax happen to you, so you don't have to be a job hopper. But staying does have its benefits because you can get broader exposure, you can gain more trust, you can get put on more advanced projects. I mean, there's benefits to both types of strategies. And I don't want to necessarily judge somebody who does one or the other. Life is too short to not be doing what you want to do. And there are biases in the process that you want to be aware of. I have a post scheduled here coming up, so spoiler alert. But who was it? Was it like Chris Rock or something like that, who said, stop telling kids you can be anything you want to be. You can be what you're good at, and only if they're hiring. And so like engineers, they hop around jobs so often because you'll make more money coming here. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. Or it's like, we're solving this big, huge new problem, and you're an engineer and your mind works this way, and that's so amazing. And they go. But eventually, what if that skill set becomes obsolete? Now you're no longer in high demand. Then what do? Now you've got all of these jobs, and then it's a little bit more taboo. So you really have to be methodical and strategic about taking ownership of your career and keeping an eye out on the market so you don't miss critical hints of like what's to come, basically future proofing your career.
Oof. Well, we could go into that. We got to talk. Now you brought up, you dinged it with we got to talk about AI and how people can be future proofing. But just to touch on loyalty, when I would do trainings for companies, I would talk about who's killed loyalty. And they might think, oh, these kids coming up now, these millennials, these Gen Zs, they're not loyal. That's the problem. It's like, why should they be loyal? Because companies have killed loyalty with things like layoffs. When you're just a number, when you're not getting paid what you're worth, you kill loyalty. But when you are loyal to people and they know you're loyal to them, they will be loyal in reciprocation as much as can be possible.
Yeah.
And you also hit on a good point of like, you do have to do what's best for you, because at the end of the day, you are probably more likely just a number on somebody's spreadsheet than you are an individual. Now, if you work in a small business, or if you work in a company of a few hundred people, you're probably not just a number. But the bigger the company, the more likely that you could be let go at any point, at any day, like you said, even at the highest level. So you have to go, well, how am I going to take care of my family? How am I going to take care of my best interest? And part of that would even be talking to a recruiter. If they ask you, you don't have to leave, but maybe you do want to find out what opportunities.
What's happening out there?
Yeah, maybe you want to make sure you're good at interviewing. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong as long as you're not, I don't know, taking a sick day to do. But like, if you've got free time and you can do something where you can find out, make sure that you're getting the proper market value for your skills and that you're even able to interview properly. I think that's a whole other thing. I'm sure you deal with that with people too.
Like, interviewing is a skill. You have to practice to get good at it. And it's different than sales. Like, it's not just the gift for gab. It's the gift for strategically aligning pain points. But like what you were saying about the loyalty, who broke it, there's a dichotomy here. Private or once you get to the IPO phase, when an organization's public, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to be profitable. At the end of the day, they're accountable for that. And so it is definitely a very challenging problem for the board, for C-level executives to manage that culture piece, and that job security piece with the realities of a money-making business, because it's a business at the end of the day. Now, smaller companies, the interesting thing, like I'm working with 3 startups right now consulting, and as they're working on building out their people operations and their SOPs for annual promotions, performance reviews, financial compensations, and things like that, you want to attract and retain top talent. Part of that is financial compensation. And there's so many ways to get creative with it. I mean, yeah, people want their base salary, but you can also build wealth through equity, and a lot of people, they don't mind having part of their compensation based on bonus. But a lot of people have been burned lately with going years without getting their bonus. So they are becoming more and more sensitive to, how does my complete compensation package look like? What am I realistically going to expect? And I don't care that this is your business. I don't care that you have a fiduciary responsibility. I got a family to take care of. And so that dichotomy, it definitely is a very challenging and complex problem that I don't think people give enough credit to, because we're so emotional about the topic. But when we just look at it, it's like, okay, this is a complicated process, and I like how this company manages it versus this. So then go to that company, right? Like, do your due diligence before you get put in a situation where you're not going to be happy.
That's such a great point. There is no simple, everybody should do this. No, you shouldn't do this. You have to keep people, because there's a lot of companies that, especially right now with what's going on in the news with companies laying off and how much at mass it's happening. They're like, we never lay off. We did this. We take pay cuts. We do those things. And that is sometimes maybe the most noble and right thing that you can do. And you will drive loyalty when they know that you're not above suffering with what's going on. Like, that could be huge. It's not everybody's option. If you're a multi-billion-dollar company, they're like with tens of thousands of employees, the math doesn't work. So you have to realize it's complicated. And even you just looking at market trends, when you have a downturn or a trend, I know a lot of people are talking about Tesla. And I don't know if you have unique insight on Tesla. If you do, I would love to hear it. But it's like, it's a massive company, and there's a lot of shifts going on with what consumers want. A lot of car companies are completely getting out of their electric market or reducing it drastically. So I think there's just a lot of changes going on that you have to take this into this huge, massive effect. And if you're only looking like they're laying off people, that's mean. That's a pretty simple view towards how business and all things work. It sucks, but you can't always avoid it. I don't know. Do you have anything with like the current, what you're seeing?
Tesla's a perfect example. If you back in 2022, what's the Chinese competitor of Tesla? Off the top of your head, do you know? It's like MB something. Randy, do you know what the competitor's called?
I don't, but I can pretend I'm like the guy behind the computer here looking up stuff. I'll look it up. So it's Tesla's biggest competitor?
Yeah. So because my stock was impacted.
Your stock was in BYD? Is that it?
No. I have Tesla stock.
Yeah, but the BYD, is that the company?
Yeah, BYD. So in 2022, BYD took over in terms of market share over Tesla. They've been talking about wanting to break into the American market now for a while. So this is 2 years in the making. And internally, they have been doing so much to compete against market share. And so if you've been a Tesla employee and you didn't foresee layoffs happening, there's a bit of naivety there, because when there's market disruption shifts, especially with pricing, right? Like that company, the BYD, is significantly cheaper than Tesla. And if they flood the market, I mean, Tesla's going to have a really hard time competing. And so when Tesla announced their RIF, and the federal government requires any organization doing layoffs to a certain amount to file that. It's under the Warren Act. So everybody who's going to be impacted by that layoff will receive a Warren letter and have 90 days to prepare for their layoff. Some people immediately have their computers shut off, but still keep getting paid. And some people work the entire way through the layoff period. But anyways, anybody who didn't see that this market disruption and these constant shifts in how do we get more lean, how do we compete in this global stage, anybody who didn't see that that was going to affect employees, they maybe just don't have as much exposure to how companies make decisions than others, because it wasn't a shocker. If anything, it was really shocking that they waited 2 years to have to lay off that many people. And as professionals, it's wise to have a deeper level understanding of how global economies impact our job stability. We're currently in an election year. Historically, election years position the job market to be flat, to be a difficult job search. That's going back decades that they've been recording this data. So it's not a shocker that this year we're in a flat market, that the job search is difficult. The person who runs, interest rates, whatever his name is, already announced, I am not going to reduce interest rates until after the election because I don't want to be viewed or accused of tampering with the election. So companies are waiting to invest in certain capital projects until after the election is over. The wars that are going on are making the supply chain have a lot of issues. China and India coming up as, emerging global leaders. I mean, China was always kind of been neck and neck with America. And I don't want to get into politics or like US loyalty or pride or anything. Like, it has nothing to do with that. It's just straight business. But American-based companies are broadening their executive leadership team across different global powerhouses. Not because they want to take jobs from Americans, but because it's smart business. And so traditionally, you see blue collar complaints. They're taking our jobs. But more and more 6 figures and up professionals are having a challenge. They're having to compete at a completely different level than they've ever had to before. Vanguard, the 401k provider, on the 30th of last month came out with a report showing the blue collar boom. All the Department of Labor statistics about how the economy is great. It's because there's a blue collar boom. White collar, though, they haven't since 2014. They haven't had this few of people like joining into a new 401k program from a new hire job. Since 2014, it has significantly stalled. And so if you make 6 figures on top of that, on top of everything that's going along with the election year and the economic climate globally, there's just less hiring happening.
No, you made me think you did I got 2 things for you. That should be a Jolt Your Career t-shirt. It's just straight business. It ain't personal, it's business. You have to be aware of the markets and the industries you're in, and who else is going to ultimately be responsible for you and your career, if not you. If you're hoping that there's all these other people out there that are looking out for your own personal interest, think again. You need to make sure that you're positioning yourself and you're upping your skills and you're looking at markets, and maybe you are polishing up your resume. Maybe you are calling Teegan going, I don't know about this. I might need to whatever. Let's get me prepared if the worst should happen. You got to
I
take
looked out to mid-June. That should tell you something about the kind of market we're in right now.
exactly, and that's a great insight with the with the election year, right? A lot of people are always afraid if there's going to be a changing of the guard, if there's going to be a policy, whenever the game is going to change, which it does every couple of years in America, people get nervous and they just say, let's hold our cards and let's wait. So that's also a good thing for people to think about why it might be the challenge they are finding it. And then you had the quote of they're taking our Jeeves, which if you're not a South Park fan, they do an excellent job for a cartoon actually portraying the kind of the blue collar job aspect, which is absolutely hilarious. And I'm like, you guys do a better job than any political news outlet at looking at like how this actually impacts people. And then they recently did one, and I don't know if this kind of goes into what we're talking about, white collar work on AI. And the funniest aspect of the episode is all the people that have the white collar jobs, and like the main character, Randy, has got geology skills. So he's at Home Depot trying to trade his geology skills for blue collar work. And they're like rolling up in these awesome cars, and like they've got all this money and they're decked out in Louis Vuitton and all this stuff. And it's hilarious because there is a huge shift, and it was all because of like Chat GPT and looking at that, at how white collar work is actually the first thing to go. We don't have the robots yet that can go turn the wrenches and install the plumbing and put the wiring in, but we can outsource copywriting. We can make videos now. There's just, it's also made all aspects of work easier. So then you need less people to do that. So have you seen that impact people? Are you seeing I don't know, well, I'll call it the Chat GPT effect on white collar work?
Okay, so rewinding just slightly, and I'll bring it full circle, I promise. And during the recession in like 08, we were in a labor shortage then. Like when I worked for the Department of Labor Agencies under the WIOA grant, anybody who is on unemployment, look up WIOA, WIOA, and get support. It's funded by taxpayers. You've already paid into it. Utilize it. Every local community has one. There's tons of resources there for you, free. You have to qualify, but still amazing. But anyways, there was a labor shortage then, because how many of us, I'm an 80s baby, but we were told, you don't want to do the blue collar jobs. You want to do the white collar jobs, And so many of us went to college, and we have a massive shortage in blue collar workers, and it's only compounded. And so we have a surplus of white collar professionals. And to Cassidy's point in the comments, he said, I think the mass layoffs post-COVID hiring also impacted the hiring numbers. He's absolutely right in that there were so many people who like got into tech, for example, during the COVID hiring boom. And so it was like everybody got laid off. Then people reskilled, servers decided that they weren't going to be serving anymore, hospitality and things like that, hospitality or like retail. So many of those people got corporate jobs, call centers, etc. So those people then, who those jobs were replaced by, maybe were trying to level up in their career, or maybe how to pivot or whatever. Or and then certain areas started to get oversaturated. And because capital was so easy to come by to rejuvenate the economy, organizations were just throwing money around and hiring like crazy and having bloated salaries. But then reality struck, and it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't good business. So then all of these layoffs happened. Top tier talent were laid off again. Like this is just in a matter of 12, 24 months. And so we've got a mixture of people who are still looking for work or good work since their first initial COVID layoff, who then might have been hired or re-looking for work again after these most recent rounds of layoffs. And now we're in an environment where companies are really slow to hire. So there's oversaturation, there's a lack of skill, and people always say, well, the company should train me. But many companies don't have the budget to invest in developing. And when they're high, they might invest that in internal employees. But if you've been let go, you've got to figure that out on your own. You've got to be qualified to do the job that you're applying for. And to your point with the AI, it's so emerging. It's changing so rapidly that it's very difficult to be competitive in that space, especially if you're laid off and you currently don't have hands-on access to it in an organization. So it's a pretty complicated mess that job seekers having to deal with. But the good news is I've always dealt with messes throughout my career in helping job seekers. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel that maybe we should touch on.
Well, what I'm hearing from you is, maybe instead of getting another job in the same industry that might lay you off in 2 years, pick up a wrench and become a plumber. We need some plumbers. Plumbers are making like what lawyers would make. They're making like $300 an hour. Now, what do you tell? I mean, and maybe that's a good way to cap it off. If somebody's in a situation where they're worried about being laid off, no matter what industry they're in, or they're worried in some respect, or they are currently job seeking, what is something that you would just say, here's the best place to start? This is foundational. Like if you're at this point or you're worried, this is where you get started polishing up your opportunity to show people who you are and what you are. Is it just starting with the resume, or what would you tell people to do?
Even before the resume, you have to get crystal clear on what you want to do. So step number one of a job search is always clarity. Who are you? What do you want to do? What do you like to do? You might be good at something that you don't like. And so redefining and reevaluating what your priorities are for this next phase of career. I do biannual career check-ins, always around New Year's Eve, because it's like a time to reflect on the previous year, New Year's resolutions, goals, and always around the end of June because it's my birthday and it's like the 6-month mark. So I think about, what do I want from life? Do I want to slow down? Do I want to progress? Do I want to pivot? And that allows you to take ownership of how you articulate who you presently are and what value you're going to be able to provide based upon those objectives. Once you are crystal clear on all of that, then you can freshen up your resume. I always write resumes with the client's goals in mind, but also the market in mind. Some leaders, for example, are transformational leaders. They come in and they disrupt things. They just overhaul stuff. Some leaders are turnaround leaders. They come into a bad situation and they figure out how to get it right. And once it's right and smooth sailing, they move on because they're bored. And then there's those leaders who really thrive while things are good. They keep the ship smooth sailing. And not everyone is good at both. Like if you think of politics, there's wartime leaders and there's peacetime leaders. Same things with corporate jobs. Like there's different traits that make you good at different types of situations. And you have to identify, what kind of mess do you want to get yourself into? Because at the end of the day, companies are hiring because they have a problem that you can solve. Maybe it's growing revenue. Maybe if it's increasing operational effectiveness. Maybe it's setting the standards for hiring and company culture. Whatever it may be, own it, embody that, and then present yourself in that way. And you want that to be captured on a resume, yes, but you also really want to focus that on your LinkedIn profile. Like you want your vibe on LinkedIn to attract your tribe. Where on your resume, you have your master resume, but then when you're seeking other opportunities, that resume shouldn't be about you. It should be about how you can solve their problems. So you actually want to tweak that resume slightly. It shouldn't take long. Like you're not rewriting the whole entire thing. You're just changing up a little bit of the messaging or keywords to position yourself to be exactly what that company's looking for. And that takes a lot of research. That takes a lot of networking. And so once you have that clarity, once you've updated your professional brand, then you really want to be in the weeds on researching what opportunities are there, what kinds of companies or products am I attracted to, who can I be speaking to that's going to be able to give me additional insights on it. Are there news, investor relations, financial reports that I can be reviewing that are going to give me confidence that this is a good and strategic next step for me? And that way, like all of that research is so worth it to make sure you end up really where you want to be.
So much gold and so little time to cover it all. Hey, real quick, number one on their clarity. I even talked about it last week with our guest Amina. Why are you doing what you're doing? You should be pointed in the direction, and you should know what you want, because otherwise you could end up anywhere and then you go, oh, I'm not happy here. Well, you didn't get clear. You didn't get clear from the beginning. So of course that's going to happen. So that's a golden one. And then what you said there towards the end, customizing your resume. When I was searching, I probably had 5 or 6 different ones, and I would always change the title and I would edit the top section. And if there's anything I really wanted to highlight in like the experience, then I would change it. But I had probably 5 or 6 different, relatively the same, but then targeted. And you should be doing that, right? There are easy ways on LinkedIn just to like throw out as much on the wall and see what sticks. That does not seem to work at all when you are
searching. Cast a wide net, you do not catch fish.
Say that again. Say it one more time.
When you cast a wide net, you don't catch fish. It just doesn't work. You've got to be specific. When you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. Use whatever cliche floats your boat, but it's true. Like
this was 2 or 3 weeks ago. We said the riches were in the niches. Like
yes.
You can learn something if you show up here at your lunchtime. It's absolutely true to stand out. There are times, and you could even say this for leaders. Maybe there are sometimes leaders need to kind of be a jack of all trades, but that is their niche. They're good at kind of doing a little bit of everything. There could be, like you said, I'm really good at looking at what's messed up in an organization and turning it around. But a turnaround leader isn't going to be there forever because they're the turnaround person. They're going to go somewhere else that they can do a turnaround in, because that's the thing that they're really good at. Sailing the ship when everything's smooth and whatever you might need. I mean, there's so many different things. They had, who was it? I don't know if this caught your eye, but like when they were having the ousting the Disney CEO and bringing back Bob Iger and stuff like that, like those are different kinds of leaders and different styles. And you can make people that have giant boards nervous if you are misaligned with what other things they think. And then, oh gosh, things were so great with Bob Iger. He bought all these properties. We took over the world. Let's get him back. Whether that's the right decision or not, but it's like he has a brand. He has a brand as a leader. And so when it came time to say, oh, you know who we need? They think of him because they also associate him.
It's not just leaders who have these reputations. Like you're in sales, Randy. You have a reputation. Well, like your reputation with me is you're the fun guy. You're the guy that has gift for gab. You will quickly make anyone feel like they belong, like they can trust you, like they can open up to you. That's your brand. And
I blush easy, Teegan. I blush easy.
But it's everyone has a brand, and it's just if you want to take ownership of it. I remember vividly. Well, the janitor who used to work in the building that I worked in, I was pregnant. I passed out. And she came and she like put the cold cloth on my forehead and she brought me water and some bread and stuff. And she was like, put a towel underneath my face so I didn't have to have my head on the dirty bathroom floor. But she would always come and check on me after that. And she would always say good morning, and she would always say good night. She knew every single person in that building, their name, their dog's name, what kind of cigarettes they smoked, if they were smokers, if they weren't drinkers, if they were going to the after work socializing events, who drank, who didn't drink. She knew everything about everybody. I mean, she was incredible. And she ran maintenance for the building. And so everyone has their brand. Everyone has a reputation for the value they bring. And what is your reputation? What is your brand saying? Because regardless of what level you're at in your career, the power of careers are built off of people. When you can get people mentoring you, that's fantastic. You always want to be a lifelong learner. But when you can get people talking about you and advocating for you behind closed doors, like when you're not there, that's when the magic in your career happens. When you find those sponsors. And that can be done even if you're unemployed and on your job search. All it takes is having conversations, talking to new people, building relationships, being a giver.
That's so powerful because you have a brand inside your organization. You have a brand with your former coworkers. You have brands with all different people. Don't you want to lead with your best foot forward, that people are also thinking of you when there's an opportunity? Oh, I loved working with them. They were great at this. You know what? We need that person. How many people do you hear about that where someone else recruited them into an organization who just had a great experience with them as a person and working with them? So yeah, you're kind of how you do everything or how you do anything is how you do everything. Like you carry your brand with you, you carry your work. Were you a hard worker at that? Even if you get laid off or you have something, take all of that into the next thing. Find people around you who will advocate and, as you said, will sponsor you behind your back in the most positive way to sing your praises and promote you. So that's.
I've even worked with clients who were fired, like who left an organization after a PIP, like they didn't meet their performance goals. And in the interview process, like in the application, have you ever been fired? Or in the interview process, it was, hey, you were referred by so-and-so, but I see you were fired from your last job. Tell me about that. And you just have to confidently talk through, hey, there was a shift in expectations. And while I, don't want to say anything bad about the organization, it just wasn't a good fit. Or I'm working with a client whose boss threatened to kick his ass, so he left. And within the industry, that boss has a reputation because he has fought an employee before. And so somebody in the interview was like, was it so-and-so? And he was like, yeah. And then they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I would have left too. And so even if you don't always have a reputation for being elite, for being a high performer, let's say you are just a B player, or just a B player on paper, you can redeem yourself. You can say, I learned this lesson. Since then, I've reevaluated what my goals were and figured out that this is more suitable for me. Failure has taught me more than my successes ever have. So there's a way to take ownership of that message, regardless of the situation you're in. You have to have confidence. You have to love yourself to get other people to respect you.
Everybody loves people who are authentic. And even if you did something wrong or bad, that you own up to it, you have the confidence to say it and be okay with it, that speaks volumes of you. Because right, you could be in an organization or you could be aligned with something that didn't align with you. You thought it was going to, you tried, it didn't work out. So what did you learn? How are you going to do better in the future? What did that teach you? That's perfect. And that, I would say that's so refreshing to have people not probably trying to lie to you in an interview. I
always ask that question every single interview. So if you have an interview scheduled with me coming up, I'm going to ask you, take this position off the table. What would you want to be doing? Always. What's your why? I always ask that question. And tell me about a time that you lost trust. How did you gain it back? And people hate interviewing with me because they're like, damn, I had to think really hard about this. And they always write back and think, I thought more about the question you asked me. And here's, after putting more thought into it, how I feel about it. But it's really important to be able to take ownership of how you've messed up. And typically when you mess up, you lose trust. So that's why I specifically ask it that way. So people can't like put a positive spin on it. Like when somebody asks, and this is an awful question, what's your weakness? And then they secretly put a strength. No, don't do that.
I work too hard. I care too much. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, before, because I want to try to keep this tight and respectful of your time, do a quick hard pivot, but actually it ties in perfectly because a lot of times people will grow in a direction that they didn't realize. They may completely pivot and find out that that's perfect for them. You're obviously continuing to help people in their careers one-on-one, getting them placed at the place that they have been clear about, that reflects their why of what they want. But you've also grown yourself, which I thought was so fascinating when we talked, that you are doing more for organizations. You touched on it earlier and just said that you're helping with the whole process of startups, but that's a big diversion from working with individuals. Now you're shaping the whole culture, or is it basically like it's old hat, I've done it, I'm just doing it for a new group of people?
So I worked with a startup company pre-COVID and learned so much. I had a relationship with one of the founders, and they brought me on a consulting basis. And it was like, what's the job description? Duties as assigned type of scrappy startup. I learned so much. And when working with my private clients, I share insights and position who they are as leaders in a way that they hadn't looked at before. I'm dyslexic, and so that might have something to do with it. My mind just works different than neurotypical people. I don't know. But a lot of my clients are just rock stars. They're amazing human beings. And some of them choose to go the entrepreneurship route. They decided, hey, that product that I always wanted to build, but nobody would be willing to fund, I'm doing it. I'm betting on me and I'm going to be a billionaire. Heck yeah. Awesome. Or I, sold my company and now I'm on to the next project, or, I'm launching into this for one reason or another. So my old clients have come back to me and given me opportunities and said, hey, I don't know exactly how to do this, but I want to make sure that as I'm building and scaling my company, I have the type of culture that I always longed for in an organization. As a CEO, we can get blinders on that dichotomy that we talked about earlier. And so how do we position the organization as we're scaling to uphold some of these values that we hold so near and dear? It's a difficult juggling act. And so I'm working with a couple of different clients on doing just that. It's things that bring me so much pride and so much joy. Things, ironically, that I used to despise when working for the government or even at the search firm. But because I'm doing it for leaders who are just so genuinely amazing and really want to make sure that their employees work for the best type of company, that they're truly taken care of as employees, I'm really excited about it. And it's not something that, like to your point, that I sought after or I advertised, because of the relationships, because of the trust, because of my vibe. They come to me and say, hey, help me solve these problems. I don't care if you don't know how to do it right now. We're going to figure it out. And so we are.
And your brand, it's on brand for you. They know that you're perfectly capable of doing what they're asking you to do because you've done it for them, and you've done it in such a way that it spoke volumes that they trusted you and gave you an opportunity. So I don't know if I had this last time or when not, but it was the idea of luck. Was Teegan just lucky? I doubt you would
No,
think.
Teegan worked her ass off. Luck has something to do with it. Being a white woman in America has something to do with it. But I also work really hard. So I will take all of my luck. I will acknowledge the privilege that I have. I will give kudos to my husband, who I put him through the ringer on the things that I take
Maybe
on.
that's where you got lucky. You got lucky with him. Is that it?
Oh, something. It's so funny. He's his grandma's from the South, and one time she was like, "Oh, you got this big old house, baby, because that's who you married." And it was just so funny. He was like, "No, Grandma, I do really well for myself too." She was like, you know I'm about to graduate from Harvard, right? And she was like, who cares about that? She's a boss. And it was just so funny. But yeah, I mean, I've had to separate myself from some really toxic people that I love. And I have had to find my ways into the inner circle of people who make me feel really uncomfortable. But I'm inspired by their wisdom, their knowledge, their style, and I force myself to just constantly be learning. And so yes, luck has some of it, but there's a lot of intention that goes behind it. And anybody who's trying to have this level of success or clarity in your career, you can have it. It just takes effort. It takes a plan. And sometimes it takes investing. I work with a coach every single year, and every single year my coach has changed because I've had to level up my coaches. When I was trying to reach 6 figures in my business, my coach looked different than when I hit 7 figures in my business. And my coach, when I decided to launch an online platform, was different than any other coach that I had had in the past. And I have a board of directors surrounding me that have different niche expertise, because I know what my weaknesses are, and I know where I want to strive to be. And that doesn't just happen. It doesn't just get thrown in your lap, or at least not for me. So it's work, but it's worth it.
Now I know what we need to talk about next time. It's about building an empire. That's what we need to talk about. The Jolt Your Career empire. I want to hear how it was built from the first brick and so on. No, this has been absolutely awesome. I hope that people have taken a lot from it. I think there was plenty of nuggets, and I'm going to extract them as well, just to think about right now what to do, and then your whole life. Like going forward, you're going to spend a third of your life working, no matter what it is. It should be something you love, and you should be going in a direction that's planned, that's organized. If you get lucky by something, reality is going to bring you down, though. Like luck doesn't last forever. Like you could get a lucky break into an organization
for decades, and then be like, oh shit, now what do I do?
Yeah, it's, you always come down to the common denominator, which is you. You get pulled down to whatever level you are at in your growth. And so upping your skills, upping your abilities, having an awesome brand, advertising yourself, there's all kinds of pieces in there. This was absolutely amazing. This is great. I can't wait to do it. We got to do it again. I don't know when we're going to do it. We'll talk offline. We are going to do this again, and maybe it'll be about career, but I think business. I would love to, just because that's the part about you that I know the least, is what are you doing behind the scenes in your business to be successful? Because there's a lot of people, maybe you want to create your own job stability. Creating your own business is one way to do that. So
I'm going to create a post on that. You are officially, every conversation might become a post. Now
I'm going to pull snippets from this and turn those into posts. So together we're going to spread the good word. That's what's going to happen.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. It was an absolute pleasure, as always. Thank you for all the compliments. You know, I'll walk a little taller here today for my brand. And I appreciate you. You're consistent with your brand of being awesome and being a badass. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see everyone later. Adios.